back to Degree Listeners, boys and girls. Class is in session, and your professor is me, Shanghai Pete, 21st Century Digital Boy, and the last Boy Scout, the very last. Thank you so much for chilling with us tonight. There's been some exciting news in gaming this week, which naturally means it's time for me to come in and ruin everyone's day. We are, of course, talking about the new Steamdeck, the newest system that will definitely, without a doubt, this time for sure, be a Nintendo handheld killer. Doubtless, you can tell by the tone of my voice just how likely I think that is. Let's get deep inside. So, I just have one question. What the fuck is wrong with everyone? Does anyone even have a functioning memory anymore, or do they just let the industry tell them what to think? Y'all too busy slobbing Gabe's knob to even recall basic facts? Holy Christ on the cross. Seems like the entire goddamn internet has collectively decided to gargle Valve's balls this week because apparently the Steam Deck is the greatest thing anyone has ever seen. Good thing that I'm here to bring everyone back down to earth with my measured and thoughtful critique and analysis. I am by no means, however, going to try to tell you that there's no audience for this and that no one will buy it. Of course people will buy it, obviously. If their pre-order numbers are to be believed, likely a lot of people. But thing is, it's a niche of a niche of a niche. Would some people enjoy a handheld gaming PC? Absolutely, I'm one of them. But if you think this is going to be a hit with anyone outside of people that play video games, that play PC games, and want those PC games in a handheld form factor, you're fucking tripping. Will this be fun? Yeah, I'm sure it will, to an extent. But it will not be a Switch that plays PC games. That is not what is happening here. I am just gently suggesting, as I often do, that perhaps maybe you get a hold of yourself a little and maybe take a moment to pause and reflect before throwing more of your money at yet another huge corporation that hasn't given a fuck about your satisfaction as a customer for years. Okay, please, for the love of all that's good and holy, stop trying to take the PC out of PC gaming. You can't do it. Stop trying to bring PC gaming into the fucking living room, or anywhere else for that matter. They actually did that decades ago, you'll be happy to learn. It's called a game console. You want PC gaming in the living room? Well, that's fine, but we'll need to strip out all the complexities and all the modular aspects of it in order to create something reliable and idiot-proof enough to be mass-produced and used by your idiot mom. In other words, a fucking Xbox. See, the simple fact is that you can't have flexibility and reliability at the same time. A PC gaming rig sacrifices reliability for ultimate flexibility, which is why it appeals to power users and hobbyists. A console, on the other hand, sacrifices the modularity and custom nature of PC architecture in favor of ease of use and reliability, which is why it's in your living room and your PC is not. You can't have both. One is essentially the opposite of the other. In order to bring PC gaming anywhere but a PC, you have to take all the PC out of it. You need simplicity, which is a console or a handheld. You want those devices to just work, and that is not what a gaming PC does. It's what an iPhone does, it's what a Game Boy does, and it's what a Switch does. That's why people like them. It's one of the main reasons a green and black screen annihilated all attempts to dethrone it for over half a decade. Why do you think so many people play games on their phone? Because it's fucking easy. Think about it for a moment. Historically, what have always been the most popular handheld devices? iPhones and Nintendo shit. Why? Again, simplicity. Those devices run closed, walled-off custom operating systems and software on very specific hardware and only do the one thing they were designed to do. The less moving parts, so to speak, the more reliable and thus easy to design an ultra-stable software environment for. What's the exact opposite of that? Right, a fucking PC operating system. By definition, a PC operating system is really fucking complex, whether it's some rando Linux distro, Windows, or anything else. And none of those operating systems are designed to run in a closed-off handheld environment without a keyboard or a mouse. Now, sure, of course, you can make them work in those conditions, but you're then ostensibly forcing the entire system to operate in a way that it was not intended or designed to operate. And that's going to cause problems, be they big or small, and no one wants problems in their handheld. That's why all attempts to do this always fail. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You can't take the PC out of the PC, otherwise what you have left is a fucking game console. Being able to put a computer together with a random collection of unrelated parts carries with it the implicit understanding that occasionally there will be hiccups when they all try to work together. Now, on a desktop PC, those hiccups are typically manageable with a minor degree of hassle if you know what you're doing. On a handheld, On a closed form factor, even a minor hiccup and you're basically scuffed. At best, you gotta do a whole power down and cold boot. At worst, maybe you've got a dead device, which is why Nintendo handhelds don't break, for the most part, and people just toss their iPhone and get a new one if there's a problem. Need more evidence? Sure. Think about competitors to iOS devices and Nintendo handhelds. How's the fucking Surface doing? How many people outside of school or work just love their Chromebooks? What about shit PC laptop OEMs like Lenovo? How many people are using that garbage these days over something like a MacBook, which again runs a closed software environment on a tightly controlled hardware build? Sidebar, I'm not saying MacBooks are good, they're fucking garbage, but for different reasons.
They all work like iTunes, iLife. Comes on every Mac.
iLife.
My point is that they appeal because of their simplicity. People would sooner buy a keyboard for their iPad than use a fucking Dell laptop.
Dude, you're getting a Dell.
Even gaming laptops are a dying breed because, among many other problems, manufacturers still can't manage to deal with all the heat they generate. Why? Because that's not how they were intended to operate. And don't even get me started on any of the current attempts at handheld PCs. Take the fucking hint. No one wants this garbage. I don't want a PC without the PC in it. Simplicity and PC architecture are not things that can easily coexist. And all you need to do to see that is look at the current marketplace. Now, another important thing to keep in mind is that all these PC games that your Steam Deck will be playing were designed to run on Windows, not Linux. And especially not on Linux through some bootleg Windows wrapper or virtual machine with a SteamOS skin on it that Valve hacked together into some bizarre Frankenstein half-breed. How stable you think that's gonna be? Game Boys don't blue screen. On a Steam Deck, even a single error message dialog box pop-up might cripple the thing. How are you going to tab out and fix that? Will it cause the VM that they're using to run games designed for Windows on Linux to crash? How's its crash handler? We don't know, and they aren't saying. Nothing about gaming in a PC environment is as easy as plug and play, however much they'd like us to believe otherwise. But a handheld gaming platform needs to be. And forgive me if I don't believe that Valve's silly little SteamOS front end is up to the job. See, there's a reason your PlayStation is not a PC, and that all previous attempts at so-called handheld PCs have ended up in the bargain bin. If you want to play PC games the way they were intended and designed to be played, you need a gaming PC. Anything less will always be a shortcut. Now, sure, occasionally there are shortcuts that are halfway decent. Maybe Steam Deck will be one of them. But at the end of the day, if you're playing a AAA PC game on something that's not a gaming PC, you're playing it in a way that it was not designed for. And that's always going to cause problems, be they major or minor. The Switch is a platform, but the Steam Deck is just a gimped PC stuffed into a small plastic shell. You ain't getting any Steam Deck specific versions of games. The best it can do is trick Windows games into hopefully running adequately. And I think if you trust that to deliver a solid and reliable handheld gaming experience, you're kinda asking for it. Next, let's talk about the storage issues, of which there are many. Now, the lowest price model comes with 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage. Perhaps you're wondering why you've never heard of eMMC storage before. Well, that's because it's slow as fucking balls and barely used anywhere. And more importantly, because modern PC games were not designed to run on that type of storage medium. Same with an SD card. Now, does that mean PC games won't run? Of course not. But it does mean that the experience you're going to have playing them will be far from ideal and by definition, not what the developer intended. And I know what some of you are probably thinking, but I have hard drives that are only 5400 RPM, what about that? Yeah, and how's that working out for you? Even better, how are those loading times and I/O speeds going to treat that itty bitty shitty battery in your Steam Deck? My guess, not too fucking well. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you won't care and you think running AAA PC games off of a battery and an SD card will be a fantastic experience. Either way, that's not even my primary concern. The primary concern here is the storage size. The base model comes with only 64 gigabytes. And yes, obviously the Switch only comes with 32, which is, equally as pathetic, but the difference is in how many games you're gonna get on there. 32 gigs on a Switch, depending on what games you pick, you could have quite a few to play. What about PC games? What games are you playing on 64 gigabytes? Or rather, what game are you playing on that? Final Fantasy XIV, Call of Duty, Cold War, Warzone, Mass Effect Collection? Not even close. Borderlands Collection? Nope. World of Warcraft? Well, not retail, sorry chief. What about Red Dead Redemption 2? Well, that'll be over 100 gigabytes, my guy. I could go on, but I trust the point is clear. Say you do manage to find a game small enough to fit on there. You want to delete it and then wait for a download and install to complete every time you want to play a different game? Sounds like a fucking blast. Hope you got a full charge on that battery. Now, obviously, if you just want to play indies or emulators, that's not going to be nearly as much of an issue for you. But if that's all you want this thing for, there's many other options that'll do that, a lot of them likely better and certainly cheaper. And I also think it bears mentioning just how you're going to get the games that you're going to play on there. Now, assuming a default configuration, you'll be locked into Steam or SteamOS or whatever the fuck Valve wants to call it. How many people that aren't PC gamers already have a Steam library or even a Steam account, you think? Or even know what the fuck that is? How many people are going to pick this thing up and then have to create a brand new Steam account and start buying and downloading? Remember, there's no physical media for PC games anymore, so anything you want to play, you better hope it's on Steam, will fit onto your storage medium, and won't take too long to download and install, because God knows you're probably going to be doing that a lot. Obviously, anyone who plays games regularly on a PC isn't going to balk at any of that, but how much of a brand new audience you think that kind of experience is going to attract? My guess, not much. After all, superior hardware doesn't always equal a superior platform or experience. Just ask the PSP or the PS Vita, and where are they at? Oh right, in the fucking garbage. Listen, Valve, Gabe, guys, you can't just step in the ring with Ali because you think you box. Especially after you've already taken multiple shots at it in the past and gotten your shit rocked each time. You embarrassed yourselves. Why is everyone so quick to forget that? Is it simply because we're all sort of traumatized after being effectively blue-balled by Nintendo in their so-called Switch Pro for years? Maybe, I know I am. In either case, Valve hardware. Let's go over the greatest hits, shall we? How many of y'all have a Steam controller? How many games did that work for? Do they even sell that shit anymore? Not exactly a smash hit, was it? Perhaps it had something to do with that single joystick and whatever the fuck those pads are. Boy, Valve certainly are masters of gaming hardware, aren't they? What about Steam Link? Without looking it up, I bet no one even knows what the fuck that is. Well, I'll tell you. It was a device that, brace yourselves, was meant to bring PC gaming into the living room. Oh, and how well did that do? Well, it's no longer sold, and its functionality was poorly rolled into a sloppy remote play app years ago, so you tell me. Next, we have the infamous Steam Box, yet another attempt to bring PC gaming into the living room, advertised as what? Oh right, a console killer. And how well did that work out? Also worth noting is that this was the first time SteamOS graced our screens. And did people love it? Did it destroy consoles? Oh, well, since Valve already abandoned the entire Doom concept years ago, I'm gonna go ahead and say fucking no. Just like the meme says, a horrible idea with even worse execution, this entire moronic concept quickly devolved into nothing more than an overpriced gaming PC brand without any of the benefits of, you know, a gaming PC. Sounds fucking awesome. Next up is the totally not trend-chasing Vive VR headset. Just so many fantastic games made for VR, right? Totally would need more than just one hand to name them all. And all for the low price of $1,200. Huh, I mean, who doesn't have that kind of pocket change just lying around to try out on a new Valve gimmick? And I'm sure it's no coincidence at all that the best game to play on it is everyone's favorite not Half-Life 3, Alex, a game just so utterly necessary to the Half-Life franchise that they put it out for a platform with an install base roughly not even 5% the size of the PC gaming audience. Hope you all enjoyed your tech demo, so forgive me if I'm just a little bit skeptical about Valve's newest hardware fuckfest. So, do I have my doubts about this so-called platform? Clearly, I do. However, the important question for most people is, will this do what I want, and is it worth my money? Now, while I can give you my take and my impressions on all that and provide reasons why I think you should be perhaps cautious with your money and expectations here, it's really just going to come down to personal opinion. Is this a good product for you? Will you like it? And of course, I can't answer that for you. All I can do is give you the facts along with my charming brand of edgelord cynicism, and you can take it from there. If I've given you more to think about, or even just made you laugh at my dumb ass, I see that as a job well done. Now, moving on, the last discussion we're taking a look at tonight is a far more objective one, and concerning what exactly this all means for Nintendo. As I stated previously, there's simply no universe where the Steam Deck even approaches anything like competition for the Switch. In fact, if the wounds left by the Switch OLED tragedy weren't so fresh, I'm not sure we'd even be talking about them in the same sense. Now, if this was a discussion about a Sony or Microsoft handheld versus the Steam Deck, well, that'd be a much different landscape, as the eternal struggle between Xbox and PlayStation has always taken place on the battlefield of the so-called hardcore gamers. So any product trying to market to even part of that demographic, like say a handheld gaming PC, would likely have to get a little bloody. But the Switch is miles away from that scene. In fact, it's nowhere near it. The only thing the Switch and the Steam Deck have in common is that they're both handhelds, sort of. So in terms of demographics, target audience, as I'll explain, the Switch and Steam Deck share very little of either. The target audiences for the Steam Deck and Switch don't have much in common. That's true. So for that reason alone, the Steam Deck could never be a Switch killer. The Switch's largest demographics are casuals. People that don't really give a shit about Call of Duty but love to chill with Pokemon on the couch after work for a bit, whose relationship with gaming isn't defined by Kotaku and arguing about whether or not to pre-order the latest AAA fuckfest. There's a bit of crossover, sure, but a better way to explain it is that while most casuals are Nintendo fans, not all Nintendo fans are casuals. That's a claim no other gaming company can make. And while there certainly are Nintendo fans of all types and interests, Nintendo's primary focus, especially in recent years, has been on expanding their reach to an increasingly broader audience, while the likes of Sony, Microsoft, and Valve have been doing pretty much the opposite, doubling down on a belligerent and ever-narrowing audience of the hardcore. So, as you can see, modern-day Nintendo isn't and will never be threatened by any product unless it targets their primary demographic, which the Steam Deck demonstrably does not. But that doesn't mean it won't cause any problems for them. Let's take it back to 2006 and the Wii, where Nintendo made a very intentional pivot away from doing battle with Sony and Microsoft in the classic console wars arena. Now, because Nintendo is the impenetrable cipher that they are, there's just no way to know precisely why they did this, but just one look at the state of the modern console wars gives you a pretty good idea. Perhaps predicting the inevitable diminishing returns console hardware would face in the future when graphics technology hit a wall and innovation began to slow, they set out to create a completely new lane for themselves where they could court largely untapped customer demos while not remaining beholden to the zero-sum game of competition based solely on who has the best hardware. And whether by design, circumstance, luck, or some combination of all three, with the release of the Switch, they definitely finally succeeded. Even if you hate Nintendo and the Switch, that much is undeniable. It may have taken a few years, enough shovelware to clog a landfill, and an utterly failed console or two, but they did do it. And in this lane, things like criticisms of the Switch's hardware, while largely valid for the most part, never stick. No one cares. Its lack of so-called AAA blockbusters seems to have little or no effect on its ability to crush the sales figures of other consoles that do have those games. No one gives a shit what type of RAM is in a Nintendo Switch or whether or not it's got ray tracing or how good its Blu-ray player is. Rarely, if ever, does anyone even bother to compare what Nintendo's doing with Sony and Microsoft anymore. And if for some reason that does happen, so what? So while the Xbox and PlayStation are in many ways beholden to what the other is doing, and as a result subjected to endless spec sheet comparisons, online infighting, and digital foundry performance analysis, meanwhile, Nintendo avoids all that. The question is no longer Nintendo, Xbox, or PlayStation. For many people, it's Xbox or PlayStation and Nintendo. And that's exactly how Nintendo wants it. With no one to compete with, they're able to do whatever they like, to operate on whatever timetable they want, and to use whatever type of hardware they want. See, if there's no one else in your lane, doesn't matter how fast you're going or how long you take to get there, as long as people are enjoying the ride, because there's nothing to compare your progress with. What I'm trying to say is that Nintendo's over this way, alone in the carpool lane with cruise control on. Top down, loud sound, see my peaks. Until now, that is. The problem the Steam Deck creates for Nintendo is not one of demographic plundering or market share, as many people would have you believe, but of benchmarks. As long as the Switch didn't have to share its product category, or its lane, so to speak, talk of its hardware and how powerful or shitty it was fell on deaf ears. With no direct comparison available, no one gave a shit, and even less bothered to find out what the fuck a Tegra chip even was. Okay, so the Tegra chip isn't very powerful. Compared to what? The Switch costs $299. Compared to what? It's only got a 720p screen, oh god. Alright, but compared to what? It's easy to compare a PS5 to a Series X or an Android phone to an iPhone or even a PSP to a DS. But what do you compare the Switch to? Until now, seems like the answer is nothing. Competition invites comparison, but how do you effectively frame comparison without competition? You can't. And so Nintendo has thus enjoyed what is essentially a free pass to do whatever the fuck they want for the last couple years. They could ignore criticism of the ancient tech they were using, brush off complaints about the meager amount of internal storage, and set whatever price point they wanted to for other models like the Switch Lite or the OLED. So long as they were sufficiently more affordable than the console offerings of their competitors, Nintendo had nothing to worry about. They could pretty much do whatever. But with the Steamdeck, that's all changed. Now, everything about the Switch is immediately being compared and contrasted with the Steamdeck, and to no one's surprise, Nintendo doesn't come out looking too hot. Now, as I explained, there is very little, if any, overlap in target demographics for the Switch and Steam Deck, so it remains to be seen just how much effect this onslaught of Switch and Steam Deck comparisons will ultimately have on the sales and continued success of either. Like, hardly anyone is going to buy a Steam Deck instead of a Switch, or was planning on pre-ordering a Steam Deck but decided at the last minute that Switch OLED would do the job just fine. No, most people will probably have both, if anything. Nintendo's handhelds have never been bested, and Valve playing around with some PC half-breed isn't going to change that. But one thing is for sure, Nintendo no longer has the carte blanche to just sit idly by and do the bare minimum with their Switch platform anymore. This actually could get kind of interesting, though, spoiler alert, knowing Nintendo, they'll probably just keep behaving as though they don't know other companies and products exist, and we'll end up waiting till like 2024 for a true successor to the Switch. Fucking Nintendo. This is the thing, guys. When you really get down to it, the Steam Deck is a product that jury-rigs a method to run and play games on a platform and in a way that they were not designed for. And that just sounds a little fucking bootleg to me. Will it work? To a certain extent, yeah, absolutely. But is it going to be some insane Nintendo handheld killer that ushers in a whole new generation of PC handhelds? Get the fuck out of here. And really, that's not even the point. Here's the point. Where the fuck is Half-Life 3, Valve? That's our show. Thank you so much for chilling tonight and spending this little bit of your free time with us. We love you today. We love you all the way. Whether you saw a video where I laid out why I think it's smart to be cautious with your money and advised you take a wait-and-see approach to any new hardware, especially from a company with a track record like Valve's, or you think you saw a video where I did nothing but hate on a stunning and brave new product for no reason at all, I hope you liked what you saw. At this point, I think most of my videos can just be summed up as me pleading with people to think before they throw away their money to corporations that don't give a fuck about them. At any rate, I hope you'll catch up with us next week for more unabashed industry slandering and thought-provoking hate fests. Degreelessness, where toxicity and nuance come to fuck.